Everyone, my name is George, and today we're going to be continuing my Marvel series of reviews with Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, the reason I decided to cover this film in the series of Marvel reviews is because this is the introduction to Wanda Maximoff, and she plays a pretty significant role in this film. So I figured we're going to add this to the list before we get into Doctor Strange, Infinity War, and Endgame. So this film was directed by Josh Whedon, who directed the first Avengers film. And I know Josh Whedon has become more infamous these past few years for all the wrong reasons with how Justice League went, how Ray Fisher spoke out against him, Charisma Carpenter speaking out against him with her personal experience from many years ago. But Josh Whedon was known for making successful shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he made a great film with the first Avengers film. So it would make sense that people would be hyped for Avengers Age of Ultron. And I'll be honest, when it comes to Phase 2, it's not my favorite phase of the MCU. But going into this film, we had gotten two fantastic MCU films in Captain America the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy. These are top 10 MCU movies for me. I love these movies. I think they're fantastic. In fact, Winter Soldier is a top 5 MCU film for me. So, even though it might have gone off to a rough start with Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World, although I do like Iron Man 3 a lot, it was starting to pick up. And in this film, we see the Avengers teaming up to stop Ultron, who was created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, for the hope that Ultron could help protect the world, but instead he wants to exterminate it. So, the interesting thing about Age of Ultron is that it feels like you either gotta love this movie or you gotta hate this movie. And I can understand why some people might be disappointed because of the four Avenger films, this is the weakest of the Avenger movies. There are some problems with this movie. Having said that, I don't think it's a bad movie at the same time. I still like this movie. I still think it's a good movie. The problem is that this is one of those few times that Marvel really ran into a studio interference problem and had some strong disagreements with the director. Now, we've seen these kind of problems in the MCU where directors have left due to creative differences. And we've had a few Marvel mishaps, like Thor the Dark World's like the biggest one. But this was one of those instances where the director stayed on the project and he was basically fighting to keep stuff in the film. Marvel wanted to change some stuff. There were certain scenes he was fighting to keep, such as the scene where they're at the farmhouse, Hawkeye's farmhouse, and they meet Hawkeye's family. But yeah, there was a lot of fighting about creative decisions, and even though Josh Whedon was still able to keep some stuff, there are also some decisions that he kept that were frowned upon, such as how Black Widow's character was handled. Like Scarlett Johansson still gives a very good performance, but it felt like her character took a downgrade from where she was going, how she was being built up in the previous films. And luckily, the next films after this film helped her character out a lot more. But yeah, I thought the Avengers and Captain America the Winter Soldier did a lot for Natasha's character. And then we take a few steps back with what they did with her in Avengers Age of Ultron. And also, the romance between Natasha and Bruce Banner was just so awkward and really didn't make any sense whatsoever. I have no idea why it was there. Was it to give these two a, there's a relationship or some kind of love interests? I have no idea. But it was very awkward. I have no idea why it was kept in there. This is still a well acted film. The original cast Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner they still do a great job in their roles. The thing is that there was all the villain was a little bit of a downgrade as well. Ultron is basically the weakest of the Avenger villains. He's nowhere near as good as Loki and Thanos, and he was still fine with what he was given, but Ultron could have been so much more in this film. The other thing with Age of Ultron is that if it's one of those setup movies, those movies that spend a good portion of the film setting up the universe, setting up future films. Like you got like mentions of Wakanda, you have the character Claw played by Andy Serkis. You have obviously the built up tension setting up for Captain America Civil War, hints of Thor Ragnarok, obviously the setup for Infinity War and Endgame. And yeah, those films are great films. Those are some of the best films in the MCU, the movies that they're setting up. But at the same time, you kind of wish that like this film could still be a great movie like those where it doesn't need to focus on setting up these other great MCU movies. And again, when you do the set up a universe thing, you tend to really it tends to hurt the movie quite a bit. Movies like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Batman vs Superman, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, movies like that. Even Iron Man 2 was a setup film for future MCU movies. It just feels like they didn't learn that lesson. And it's obviously going to be something that's going to continue to happen with future movies. Maybe not in the MCU, but maybe other future superhero movies. But I haven't really seen a recent problem with this. So I think they have learned their lesson. And yeah, like you have some of the same stuff from the first Avenger films. You have the same kind of Josh Whedon humor, the kind of Josh Whedon character moments. And the character moments are still good. Good, although again, you have that build up tension that's starting to build up again that's going to obviously lead into Civil War. And yeah, the jokes are fine, but it sometimes felt like they were overdoing it with the Marvel humor. It felt like they wanted to keep the same formula, but not, but at the same time, play it safe. Sometimes when you do that, you play it safe, and the similarities between this film and the first Avengers film are very blatant. Like they're taking on an army at the end of the film in a city. In this case, it's not a Chitauri army, it's an Ultron army, an army of Ultron bots, and it's in this like city area, Sokovia, instead of New York City. And yeah, the difference is the city's floating because Ultron's going to use it to exterminate everyone. But again, you want to see something a little different. Like there's a few differences, but like there's not a whole lot of differences. That's why I appreciate what the Russo brothers did with Infinity War and Endgame. They did something that was different, that was more emotional, that still had humor and light moments, but still built a much stronger, better story, in my opinion. So obviously, this film also introduces is Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, and they're played by Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson. And I still think they're pretty good in these roles. This is probably Elizabeth Olsen's weakest performance as Wanda, but she definitely does improve as these films go on. It's obvious like she's still trying to figure out this character, but yeah, this is obviously the first film of probably one of the most interesting MCU characters because her story arc after this that we start to see in Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, and then WandaVision, and hopefully whatever direction they go in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The build up is obviously worth it. Like I said, there's setup in this film, and the setup is definitely worth it when it later goes down the road. And I like the start that they put into this character. And yeah, Pietro dies in this film, so it's kind of disappointing that like we only have this character in one film. But again, it does add to Wanda's character arc going forward in the MCU. And you also have the character Vision, played by Paul Bettany. And yeah, this is the last time we see Jarvis or hear Jarvis. But yeah, he's also very good as Vision. Yeah, I still like this movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just what was good could have been so much greater. And it felt like this probably should have been the first 3 hour MCU film because you're setting up all this stuff and you have all this other stuff happening. And it's like you wish you had more time to focus on the Ultron stuff. You wish Ultron could have been a much better villain. He's not a terrible villain, but you kind of wish he was a better villain. But yeah, having said all that, I do like this movie. It's definitely the weakest of the Avenger films, and I'm glad that they moved on from Josh Whedon after this. I mean, obviously, we're happy because of stuff we would later learn about Josh Whedon and how he's treated people. At the same time, though, you later find out that it was actually this film and like the frustrations that he went through in this film, and he took it out on the Justice League cast Like I'm apparently Ray Fisher said, like Josh Whedon said, "Hey, I didn't listen to Robert Downey Jr. Why should I listen to you?" So yeah, Age of Ultron kind of also helped cause problems with making Justice League. That's pretty weird. But yeah, all in all, I do like Avengers Age of Ultron, but it could have been so much more. It felt like some characters kind of took a downgrade. And I do want to address something that at first I wasn't a big fan of, but how it's panned out, it's actually aged better over time, is actually the Hawkeye having a family thing. At first I thought it was kind of weird, but kind of seeing how Hawkeye's family, Clint Barton's family, is integral to his later story arcs, how he lost them in the snap, how his character was in Endgame being this character Ronin, and like basically killing all these people. And then like you see in Hawkeye, like how things like progressed. It's definitely something that has aged better. That's a decision that actually aged better. But some of the other stuff that was questionable when they first came out and are still questionable today have not aged all that well, particularly the Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff romance. But all in all, I still think this is a solid film. It's a film worth checking out. It does set up much better films down the road. The cast is still great, and it's still worth watching. And I'm going to give Avengers Age of Ultron a B. I recommend you check it out, but again, I think the other Avenger films are so much better. So, what do you guys think about Avengers Age of Ultron? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's the worst of the Avenger films, or is it your favorite Avengers movie? There's some people that say, hey, I think all the Avenger films are fantastic, including this one. Comment below and let me know. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share this with someone that loves the Avenger movies, that loves the MCU. I hope to see you guys real soon. My next review in the Marvel series is going to be Doctor Strange. I don't really have time to touch upon Civil War. I will touch upon Civil War at a later time. But my next movie review is going to be on the new Fantastic Beasts film because I did see it today and I'm going to review that tomorrow to give you guys my thoughts on that movie. But yeah, stay tuned for that and Doctor Strange in the next couple days. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.